bit late. I think I said 9:30, but I was all set to go, and as soon as I did, I'm filming the computer screen on an iPhone, of course, for the live, and alarms started going off to remind me about all sorts of things, and then we had to swap it around and everything moved, so sorry about the delay. Anyway, what you're seeing now is the live tracker on the Golden Globe Race website. What I'm going to be doing is going through a bit of a tutorial on how to use the tracker and all the features that it has, and then we'll do a simple update on what's going on in the course. So what you see here is when you open up on the GGR website, you come along the top bar here and you come to the live section. This is my little pointer, and another thing is we will be getting a bit more sophisticated later on, but for now it's easy for me to do this. So there's the live button, okay, the red live button. When you move your cursor on the top of that, you'll see live tracker there. Here it is there, and as soon as you hit that, this is what you're going to see. You're going to get this map here, and off to the side you've got your social media feed for Twitter. So anyone putting in the hashtag GGR 2022, if you're on Twitter, you'll see this Twitter feed come up. And in fact, Pat Lawless's team has just put a tweet up 38 minutes ago when they saw that we were doing this tutorial, and it simply says GGR will be holding a live tracker update and basic tutorial at 9:30 French time, an explanation on all the bits and pieces. Excuse me. So we're a bit late because of those alarms that popped up, and Jane had to move everything around, so we're back on track. So that's the Twitter feed. You can see comments that people have been making about the tracking and so on. So if you want to be part of that conversation and you're on Twitter, you can be there. To get rid of it, you'll see that little icon there. You hit that and it disappears. If you want to bring it back, you hit it again and it comes out, so you can read the Twitter feeds and join the conversation. Up here you'll see McIntyre Adventure, Le Sable d'Olonne, Golden Globe Race. That stays. This little box just here is a rolling box with information and some of our partners that just rolls through in its own way. On the side here is the teams, so you can actually see the teams. You've got Abolish Tommy, Arno Geist, Bernard Matessi is there as well. He's on the team now, and in fact that's his track right there. So you'll see Bernard sailing now with the fleet. The departure date for him from Plymouth was set the same departure date as us, and of course he actually left on August the 22nd, but nonetheless we're sailing at the same time. I think that's the case. So then all the teams are listed here. You've got the nationality flags on the side, and you've got the colour that represents their boat. So Abolish Tommy, same colour as his hull. You'll see a little blue square there. And if you look at Damien Galou, PRB, he's got the PRB orange. So when you're looking at the boats down here, this is Damien's boat. I'll bring up bits of the box. You can see the colour immediately represented on the teams. So that's what the teams button is, and if you want to get rid of that, you hit the button and it goes away. So I'll hit it again and pulls it out. Just down here there's another one called Leaderboard. When you hit that, there's a whole wealth of information there on the leaderboard. I'm just going to drag it down. Basically at the moment, without confusing the issue, and I've got a fair bit to explain on this one, Pat Lawless is coming first. Okay, he's in the lead. I'll explain why in a minute. So the start time is there, so it was 4th of September. The time is actually, that's UTC times, not local time, so it's showing UTC 2 o'clock. And then you've got distance from the finish, okay, or distance to the finish rather, and it's still got 26,087 nautical miles to go. Distance sailed up until the last tracking position, Pat's showing 157 nautical miles. His VMG, now VMG is not boat speed, VMG is to the next waypoint on the course. He's been making 3.9 knots, okay, so that's a VMG. And distance made good is 107 nautical miles. That's in the last 24 hours. So not distance made good since the start. That's over here. Estimated time to the finish based on the current speed, which is based on VMG, and that's vector made good towards the next waypoint, which for some sounds like double Dutch anyway, suggests that he will arrive on the 8th of June at about 1900 hours. Okay, so that's 277 days and 5 hours and 6 minutes to go. Now that's not going to be the case, because at times he'll be surfing along at 12 knots and then the time to the finish will seem really short, but that's based on that speed. So correct at elapsed time, that really doesn't mean anything because we don't have handicapping. Now you'll see the same statistics for all the boats down here, and I'll come back to this when we've gone through a bit of general stuff to explain some of the technicalities of how that is all working. So the next thing, of course, you've got all of the boats here, okay, and this is Le Sable d'Olonne here, okay, and I'll explain the most important part of the tracker. Now, if you look at the top of the tracker, just here, that's your immediate control bar, control tabs to decide what you want to see. The first one is very self-explanatory. It's a zoom, and I'll pull it right back to the smallest, to the natural size, okay, and you can see Greenland up here, you've got Nova Scotia, Canada over the side, England, Europe, so you know what's going on. So it's pretty simple. You can zoom right in, okay, to the fleet. Just keep clicking the zooms. You can click and drag, obviously, the spots, but when you do, you lose your control tab at the top. Whoops, I'm on the thinger here, so I've got to then move it back. All right, so you can keep going bigger and so on, but for now I'm going to bring it back to a normal average size so we can see what's going on. The next one I think I'll show you is the type of map that you've got here. It's a little scale there, little picture of the globe. You can have satellite images, which is what it's on now, and you can scroll right into the town of Le Sable d'Olonne, see the marina and so on. This is a satellite detail one. Then you've got topographical, so you've got road maps and so on, but because we're out in the ocean, it doesn't really matter. So satellite giving you contours in the water as well, or just basic visuals, but you'll disappear once you get out in the big ocean. Okay, so again, it's all on the control bar, and I've got to click and bring that control bar back if I move the screen around. The next one I want to show you, at the moment you've got a grid there, latitude and longitude grid coming up. Oh, that's, hang on a sec, I've got here, I'm going to go back to the other satellite image. Okay. Okay, so now we'll go to the grids, and I'm not sure why I'm getting the double one here. So we've got the grids there with latitude and longitude there, very clear to see. You can see 46 north, 47 north. So you've got your latitudes going north of the equator, and then over here you've got your longitudes east and west of Greenwich. So I'm going to leave them off at the moment, so we don't need them there to save the confusion. The next one, which is the most important and most people use all the time, you'll see a little wind indicator there, like you see at the airports, and if you click that, you've got three choices. You've got no overlay at all, which is what you've got now. Click it again. You can go predict wind, which is a series. I've just clicked on that. Okay, now you see this predict wind is a series of little arrows showing you where the wind works, and it's a little bit more accurate maybe than windy, but it's hard to understand, so I never use predict wind on all of the things we do. The other is windy, that a lot of you will be familiar with. Now the windy weather is based on a couple of factors. You can see the general wind direction by the animation of these little streams going through, and to work out the wind strength you've got to go to the bottom of the map, okay, tracker map, and you'll see these color gradients. It starts off as blue, darker blue, and it goes into a light blue, then it starts to go a bluey greeny color, and then you start to get into the warmer yellows, and you go right through to red, and then you'll actually come back into another blue. Now that's giving you the wind strength. So, and you'll see little numbers there where the cursor is right now, just there, it's showing 30 knots. So when you're in that color range, it's 30 knots. When you're in these oranges here, you're showing 25 knots or so. So this wind here would be about 25, maybe over here it's gusting up to 30. Okay, so, and when you're in the green areas here, these green areas, they're down around 15 knots, 15 to 20. And when you come into this sort of blue range here, you're right back here in the 4, 5 to 10 knot range. And over here maybe 12 knots. So you can see there's a band of very little wind along there, and that's one of the most obvious overlays that you would put on the map to let you know what the boats are actually going through in terms of their wind. Excuse me. Then a couple of other things that you can do here, and it'll take a while to absorb this, but they're good features to have. This one down the end here, the little grey box that says toggle ruler, if you hit that, now if I hit two spots, I've just hit there, you'll see there's an icon there, and I hit another one over here. Okay, I've now got a ruler, and you'll see there's a drop down. The distance between these two spots that I just did, the distance is 128 nautical miles. It's listed there. The initial bearing between the first and the second is bearing 268 degrees true. Okay, and the back bearing that's coming from this way back to the other point is 85 degrees. So it's some interesting information. Now here's the trick with this. I can move this first cursor, say on top of Ian Herbert Jones, and I can bring the second cursor down here onto top of Damien, right? And I can immediately see that there's 74 nautical miles distance between the two of them. So you could say in one way that Damien is 74 nautical miles away from Ian. Okay, so it's a very handy tool to have. If I click and drag this across to the finish, I can say just clip that, grab that back to Les Sables d'Olonne, and this one's on Damien. So he's got a distance of 166 nautical miles from Les Sables d'Olonne, and the initial bearing going from Les Sables d'Olonne out to Damien is 263 degrees true, and the back bearing is 80 degrees. So they're a very useful tool for lots of things that you might want to do. To get rid of it, you just hit that again and they disappear. Okay. Now the next one I want to show you is on here you have tails. Okay, toggle tracks on, off tails and long tails. Now if I hit that, you'll see here, these are what I call snail trails. Okay, so as the boat's moving along through the tracker, he's going to leave a snail trail of exactly where he's been, and the snail trail will be upgraded every 4 hours because that's when the positions come out. And there's a few different types of snail trails. At the moment, it's the bright one, so you can see it quite clearly, and it's a long one, so it's going right to the start. If I click it again, the snail trails are gone. See, there's nothing there. All you've got is the boats. All right, and if I click it again, you've got, it's hard to tell because they're only just away, but you'll see the tails finish right there. They don't go all the way to Les Sables d'Olonne. That's a short tail. Okay, so you can have short tails or long tail going all the way back, and when you've been out for a month, you'll see what that means. Or you can have a faint trail. Right, now this is all the way back, but it's a bit fainter, so it's not distracting, but you can still see where they've been. So that's toggling the trails, and I'm going to leave, in fact I'll come back to the bright short trails because it's of relevance when you're looking at what the various boats are doing. Now if I zoom this right back, I'll take it right back to here to zero zoom, and then I click this one here which is toggle day and night. You can see here, I mean this is going back at, I didn't mention this is 4 o'clock in the morning UTC. So at 4 o'clock in the morning UTC, all of England and France would have been in the dark. This is the dark line here, and this is the daylight. So over Russia and all the rest of the world, it's daylight. And you can just see this, if I click and drag that, this is where it's getting dark. So it's getting dark in Alaska now because it's the other side of the world. So that just gives you, sometimes it's interesting when they're in the Southern Ocean to work out whether it's dark or light and all that sort of stuff. So that's toggle day night. So that's that one. So now we'll come back, we'll toggle back. And here's a very clear indication how the colour schemes work with the wind strength versus the boats. This is, now I should know this, there's a hurricane, typhoon, cyclone, call it what you like wherever you are in the world, very extreme strong winds here, and you can clearly see the colour gradients going from no wind up here, getting slightly stronger into the sort of 10 knots and then 15 to 20 knots coming in here. You're going through into the 30, 40s, and then there's going to be a truckload of wind in there, because if we just bring you back again to the colour gradient, when you go through 40 knots, so this is the 40 knots, it starts to go blue again, you're starting to get into 60 knots, and then you're really howling. So you'll see a lot more of this. Now if I just bring this over and then slide the scale up and start zooming in on this, you'll see clearly the calms in the middle. So with this, this is the huge strong winds. There's 70 knots in there, maybe 80 in here, 70, whatever. And as you go into the eye of it, it's back to a total calm. So a very clear, easy assumption on what's happening with the idea of the colour gradient to give you your wind strength. And it might sound strange at the moment, but as you go forward, it'll make a lot more sense. So okay, so now we'll come over here and focus on a few more things. I'll just zoom in to the guys. And now what I want to do is, this little sliding scale here is directly relevant to the information you have on the screen. So at the moment you can see the wind gradients we've got here, and that's what they're experiencing on the 6th of December at 6th of September rather, at 11:30 UTC. Now this is changing, keeping current as it's happening. Okay, so even though the tracker's only pinging their position at 0400 hours UTC, you can actually get the latest forecast there. So it's 6 o'clock, 6th of September at 11:30 UTC. So it's a bit of a forecast. I'm pulling it back here. So effectively, if I want to slide it forward, if I want the wind at midday on, or let's say at 1:30 UTC on the 8th of September, I just slide it along, read off the scale at the top, and so that's what you're going to be getting in a couple of days. All right. So the boat positions are real, but the weather forecasting is changed by however you move this sliding scale. So on the 9th of September at 4:30 UTC, this is the weather that you're going to get in this area. So that's the 9th of this September. We're on the 6th. So in 3 days' time, that's what you can expect. By then, the boats would have moved around the side. So just remember, you can get any weather forecasting by sliding this scale. Now it's back to basics, which is 7:30 UTC, which is now 7:30, 8:30, 9:30. Yeah, that's 9:30 local time, France. So just remember that. All right. Now I'll just zoom in a bit closer to the boats and show you the information you get when you put your cursor. It's not sliding up here. Hang on. Oops, it's easy. So I just want it. Why is not? Okay, the internet might be a bit slow. So I've zoomed in a bit more. Now you can, once again, I'll come back to Damien because he's clear here. When you put the cursor over the top, you see the box come up. There's Damien Galoo. You've got a picture of the skipper there, and it gives you basic data reading off the box. Very simple. You've got 5 knots of speed, and you've got the course that made good. So that's 280 degrees at the moment that he's sailing. Owner was PRB. You've got the position at 6th of September. At 0400 UTC, and we'd be expecting another position very soon. In the next 10 minutes you'll see this change, the relative positions change, because at the moment it's coming up to, it's 9:55 here. You've got the latitude and longitude, his position, it's very detailed at 4 o'clock in the morning UTC, and distance to the finish, 26,000 miles. Distance made good in the last 24 hours is 94 nautical miles. That's the last 24 hours from 4 o'clock the previous day. And position, and the ranking amongst all the boats, he was coming second. So any boat I put on there, your Tapio's there, making 4 knots, Asteria, same date and time of the last tracking position, latitude and longitude, distance to the finish, it's all there. And he's coming 12th. Now, how do we get the relative position to say what their ranking is? This red line represents the usual track for a boat on the course. So you can see a distinct change in the course right there. There's a big kink. All right. So right now they're measuring a distance from the position of the boat to that little kink there. Okay. And that's how we determine where their relative position is. So even though you've got, say, Kirsten down here, Kirsten's position, she's 5th, or it's measuring the distance from wherever the boat is to that little kink. That's the next course change. Okay, so it can be deceptive at times. Sometimes it'll show a boat's coming first, when in actual fact they may not be. They may just be closest to that, and the weather will dictate how long they get there as well. So there will be a little bit of interpretation that you need to be aware of as time goes by. So okay, I think let me just roll through here again one more time. So we've gone over, we don't usually zoom to a manual area. These are not zoom to all trackers. If you're following one track, you can hit that and zoom out, but they're secondary things that you don't really need. You can toggle full screen there if you want to go full screen, but it already is if you've zoomed in, and that's it. So most of it is all here. The overlays are interesting for latitude and longitude, but if you're playing around with different things, but I think that's the main ones. So now if we come to what's going on, this is the tracker update side of what's happening. The first thing is, wow, the fleet's scattered. They're doing all sorts of things, and strange things as well. We're not worried about them. I'm going to zoom in one more time just to get a feel for the boats here. Okay, You can just about see them all. So okay, so strange one here in Herbert Jones. Obviously the further he's been going to the northwest, the bigger the seas have been getting, and he's tacked back. Now I should now bring up the issue of this little button here where it's showing wind. When you hit that, okay, that was the one, nothing to do with Ian. This is under the forecasting scale. If you want to move days ahead, there's a button there. When you hit that icon, it comes down, you can go wind, temperature, pressure, cloud, currents, waves and rain. Okay, so I'm going to zoom this out because it's a bit more graphic when we explain this. So at the moment we're showing wind, and I've clearly explained that. If I wanted to see what the temperature was anywhere, I can hit that. You've now got a temperature gradient based on all the various colours, and to work out the scale of that, when you come down the bottom here, you'll see the colours, and those colours are showing roughly in the yellows and oranges about 23, 24 degrees. So they're, you know, it's very mild temperatures. Okay, and again, if I come up here, if I want to show pressure, pressure gradients, that's this one here. And once again, every time you change to a new format of information, you've got to go down the bottom here to get the scale. So based on the scale, they're sort of grey scales. It's somewhere around about 1015 hectopascals based on these coloured scales along the bottom overall of what's happening. And if I scale it back, you'll see the various pressure gradients. In fact, that typhoon over there, you can see clearly the changing colours, and you can relate that specifically to the pressure gradient. When they're in the Southern Ocean, this will be really fascinating, because you can see when the high pressures, low pressures are chasing the fleet and what's likely to come. So pressure gradient is kind of interesting. If I go for cloud cover, I've hit cloud cover there, and again you can see the various cloud issues. At the moment, if we just zoom this back to the fleet to show you where the guys and girls are, you can see they've got reasonably clear skies. And again, in the Southern Ocean, this is really interesting, because if you see huge cloud banks, they can't get sextant sights, so they may not know exactly where they are. They'll be working off DR. But it's that the clouds are interesting as well. Currents are fascinating. Now this is the current range. You can see they've all got head currents. Again, when you look at the colour scale here, they're in greens, which is less than half a knot. So it's not a big current. But in these coloured areas, you're moving up into 1 knot of current. And so if you're up here, like Damien now, we'll be getting about 1 knot of head current. The importance of that is that it interacts with the wind. Fortunately, the wind is coming in the same direction as the current, so it's not making the waves stand up. If the wind was going the other way, you can see you got wind against current, and you can get vertical waves. You know, it gets really uncomfortable. So the current is an interesting feature. You'll see that also as they go down through the Atlantic. So it's interesting sometimes just to see that. If we scale this out, you'll see how dramatic it can become. You know, you can see all the different current patches, and when they go through those currents, if you compare the wind, it gives you a lot of information. So anyway, scaling that back here one more time. Okay, so in currents, waves. Now this is the second one. After the wind, you're always looking at waves to see what they're likely to be experiencing, because it shows you some of the decisions that these guys and girls are making. So coming down to the colour scale, okay, so when you're into the blues, it's about down here, it's about sort of anywhere from 1 to 1.5 metres and so on. When you get into the reds, you're talking up around 5-6 metres. So mixing the blue and the reds, you've probably got 4 to 5 metre seas here. Oh, there you go. I don't know whether anyone noticed that. We just had a new update. All the boats moved. It happened right at that instance at 1 minute past 10 local time here in France, and that's 0800 UTC, and the trackers at the moment are set for every 4 hours. We will probably change that through the whole fleet. We'll probably bring it forward a little bit, maybe today, so that they'll all change their relative tracking position, because we usually do this report at 9 o'clock local time here in France, which is 7 o'clock UTC, so you can catch it first thing in the morning, the updates, the actual, not a tutorial of course, but we'll give you a full graphic update on what the fleet's doing and what the weather they're likely to expect every day and the days going forward. So yeah, wave height. It's yeah, kind of interesting. I reckon they're getting 4 to 5 knots of 4 to 5 meters of sea, maybe. So quite fun. Anyway, let's. I think you've got most of the things. Or one other little thing. This sliding scale at the bottom is actually a video replay. So if I pull this back, now you can see the boats going backwards. Okay, so I can pull them all back to the start in Les Sables d'Olonne. Right, boom. Now when I hit play. Right, I can hit play, and they're actually now another scale comes up on the bottom here, and I can vary the speed of the replay, so you can hardly see them going. But if I slide that forward, you'll see this is a video replay. I've sped it up a bit, and I can hit play, boom. Where are we? Here we go. Play, pause. So that should be playing now. Yeah, the boats are moving. Now I'm going to speed it up, so I can speed that up. The boats are still moving. I need to increase the speed, which is this one here. So the top one increases the speed of the replay. Right, so I'm on maximum speed. You've got your own little replay of the race happening there. Okay, and it's quite fun to do that when they've been going for a week or so. You can actually replay everyone to the point where the latest position was. You'll see them all stop in a minute. So that's replay, that's it, and now they've stopped. And whatever extra information you had on the screen comes back to play. So just to run that back, it's quite a fun thing to do. Anyway, you can play around with that later. So the top is the speed, and the bottom here is the video replay of what's going on. Okay, I'm going to come back to the wind now, because the wind will show, forget the sea, the wind will show you why the sailors are making the decisions that they're actually making. So here's the wind. And you can see the wind, all these guys are on port tack. Okay, and if we go with Damien first, he's still making 4.3 knots. He's probably got 2 reefs in the mainsail, and he'd have a furled head sail. The sea's 4 or 5 meters maybe, and the wind strength is probably around 25 to 30, gusting higher maybe. But he's determined to get out there, so they're pushing into it, and I'll explain when you see the forecast of the wind shortly. Tapio's right behind him. Now, it was a slow start for Tapio, but he also knows the tactic of getting out to the west, ready for the swing and back off of or decreasing of wind strength later on to get around Cape Finisterre. So they've obviously done some serious routing before they left port with computer modelling and so on, and worked out we've got to go west. Behind here is Mark Sinclair. Now, work that out. I have no idea, but Mark is actually plugging along really well. The heavy weather and the bigger seas don't worry him. I'm completely impressed. I can't believe it, actually. So yeah, he's beeline straight out to the west. Maybe Tapio tipped him off. And then Michael Goog, same deal. I mean, would be more comfortable to go south where the rest of the fleet is, but he's out to prove a point. They all are to a degree, so that's he's in a really good position. And in Herbert Jones, I don't know whether you saw, just before he tacked, before the new update, he was actually, I'm going to zoom in a bit closer here so we can see their Snail Trail, and it'll show you where he's been. Here we go, a little bit bigger. So we'll just deal with these boats. So you can see Ian's track was coming along here, and then he would have met heavier seas and winds, and he was heading backwards down here. And so maybe it was because he was asleep, wanted to be comfortable, but he was only tacking through basically 180 degrees. He was going back the same way, so he's lost a bit of ground. Now he's heading in the right direction. So let's just wait and see what happens. But that's an interesting situation, and I'll come back down again. So the whole fleet's really split into 2 groups. There's those that have decided to go out to the west, and then there's the middle group that are taking the band, where probably what they're doing, they know there's no wind over here, so they're sailing into the breeze, and if it gets too much and too hard, they're tacking across, coming back, and actually maintaining into the moderate breeze rather than the heavier breeze and heavier seas. So as it gets bigger seas and more wind, they're tacking back, coming away. As it gets a little bit lighter, they'll tack back in, because they know there's no wind over here, time to go back. The strange one was Abolish Tommy. I got no idea what he was doing, because he, like Ian Herbert Jones, ended up tacking away. He was heading down this way. Whether something was going wrong with the boat and he needed to fix it, whether he went to sleep and the wind pilot wasn't up for it, and he didn't cope with it. But you never go away from the course. This is the course. If you're tacking, you're either that way or this way. So I think Abolish will have a story to tell us. Nonetheless, he's back in the right way now and doing okay. Edward doing really well. As you can see, Edward's in front of Abolish at the moment, which is pretty cool. Jeremy's been taking conservative track. He's right there, doing 3 knots at the moment, so they haven't got a lot of breeze. If we look at Abolish, she's only doing 3.6, again in this low wind band. And Elliot doing really well. Elliot's in front of Abolish. Work that out. So that's cool. He's in a really nice spot and doing 4 knots. So Guy Waits, the same again. You got Elliot tailing behind, so just behind him. Pat's powering. He's taken a distinct course. You can see he's decided not to go to the west. He's going to run down this band of breeze and try and hold it as long as he can. If he goes over here, it's too much. He'll tack away and come back down again. So, and Kirsten was looking really good, but she was obviously starting to slow down, so she's tacked away and now picking up again, so to stay in touch with the breeze. So that's cool. And Guy Dubois, as everyone knows, he was feeling a bit off the night before, rang the doctors, but the boat's been making pretty good time still. He's just been taking it easy, and now he's flying. So this wind indication now, he's got more than 0 wind there at the moment. So remembering that all this forecasting is a bit loose, it's not absolutely accurate, because Guy's got breeze at the moment. He's heading down, and that was the original tactic from the forecast when he went off. I don't think he had routing information. He just made a structural plan and said, get down to the coast, off he's on, and try and sneak along and then drop around the corner. So I think I've covered everyone there. Now I'm going to do a zoom out and show you, show you the weather forecasting for the next couple of days. It'll be easy to see, and it's going to be very challenging. I think that's the easiest format. I'll get rid of this, and then we'll start pulling the weather forward. So that's what we've got at the moment. If we come through a day, if I go through to that's about in about a day's time, still the same, but you can see the wind's dying off. Now what's going to happen is these guys going out to the west, they'll be over here somewhere, and eventually they're hoping to tack down and get down around Finisterre in that way. But that's what they've got for the first day. So still not easy, but not as strong. The wind will back off a little bit. If I go through to the next day, go through to the 8th, about the same time, bingo, you can see it's on the nose. Now this is where the tactic of being at the west out here, if they're out here somewhere, as that wind changes, they'll just come down here and it's on the beam. But it won't be like that. They'll follow it close reaching all the way down. So these guys coming out here are going to get a big push and rush on instead of these guys. When they're here, you look what they've got. They've still got headwinds. This is in 2 days' time, so they're going to be tacking. They're short tacking all the way. So tactically, there's no question that this is probably the way to go to get out there. Then when that happens, so that's on the 8th, like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning on the 8th. If I take it through to the 9th, you'll see it's not getting easy, because now whatever's happening, these guys that got the break down in this region have got light headwinds, and there's not a lot happening, because if I zoom back, you'll see what the remnants of this all of this rubbish over here is doing to the wind in just off Portugal. It's going to be very slow ride down to Lanzarote, which is down here. So if we go another day, we'll bring it out to the 10th, about this time on the 10th. You've finally got a band of breeze which is looking like trade winds, but it's a long way down. It's south of Lisbon, so they're all going to be stressed trying to get down low, because if I zoom into that and then backtrack the weather again, you'll see exactly what's happening. I mean, there's no wind when it's wind there. There's light wind. That's on the 10th, which is still 4 days away, but it's going to take them that long to get there. If we come back to come back a day, so we're now like 3 days away, really not much happening here. So we actually fly to Lanzarote on the weekend. We're going to be waiting for a week, I reckon, before they get there. So very demanding. I think that's probably boring you enough at the moment on this whole thing. We've been at it for over half an hour. So anyway, that's how it works. That's the tracker. You can click and drag at any time. Remember, you can zoom in. We'll zoom back in here and see what's going on, where the guys are. Have a play. This will be posted at the top of the Facebook page, and sometime possibly today we'll do a film of Lutz going through the process of putting the Yellow Brick app on your mobile device, on your phone, and how you can use your phone system as well. So
enough for now. Thanks for that. We'll be back virtually every day. We're pretty busy at the moment, but we will be into a routine soon where every day at 9 o'clock in the morning local times in France, we'll do it varies, about a 20-minute update on what's happening with the fleet and what weather they can expect and what they're likely to do. But everything's all good for now. So thanks very much.